February 2nd, 2000.
There was the public president.
This office is a sacred trust, and I am determined to be worthy of that trust.
And the Nixon behind closed doors.
Let's get away from the boat. Bobby Kennedy was the greatest trapper, and I'm getting the names. I'm going to publish the names next Thursday. So let your assholes know that they're going to get this, Henry. Right in the can.
As a scandal engulfed his presidency, there were only questions.
How could it have happened? Who is to blame?
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
See, getting the president out on national television saying it's a hell of a crisis and so forth, I think has a tendency to overplay the urban hearings, overplay me, overplay that I'm guilty and I'm going to resign, all that bullshit. And God damn it, I'm not going to do that.
Tonight, the Nixon tapes, the conversations he never wanted you to hear.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Bury.
Imagine if, during the darkest days of the Clinton White House, you could have eavesdropped on the president and his closest aides as they discussed ways to fight his impeachment. The reason you'll never hear those conversations is precisely because of the tapes you will hear tonight. These conversations and phone calls recorded in the Nixon White House, known as the abuse of power tapes, led directly to Richard Nixon's resignation and to the end of the White House taping system. These tapes come to light only after a 25-year legal battle waged and won by the group Public Citizen and by historian Stanley Kutler, who will be our guest tonight. Nearly 2 weeks ago, Nightline broadcast the first group of Nixon tapes released by the National Archives. Today, the archives provided another 250 hours. Since the phone calls are far more intelligible than the office conversations, we will concentrate on those. What many of them have in common is a certain sound of desperation from a president under siege during the escalating Watergate scandal. Our last broadcast ended with President Nixon calling White House counsel John Dean to the Oval Office on April 16, 1973, and asking for his resignation. The next day, the Watergate story changed dramatically. President Nixon, after first refusing to cooperate with the Senate Watergate Committee, reluctantly reversed himself.
All members of the White House staff will appear voluntarily when requested by the committee. They will testify under oath, and they will answer fully all proper questions.
Late that night, in a phone conversation with National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, nearly 16 months before he would become the first president to resign, Nixon wonders aloud about stepping down and letting Vice President Spiro Agnew take over.
Maybe we'll, I've even considered the possibility of, frankly, just throwing myself on the sword and letting Agnew take it. What the hell?
That is out of the question, with all due respect, Mr. President. That cannot be considered.
Well,
The personality, what it would do to the presidency and to the historical injustice of it. Why should you do it? And what good would it do? Whom would it help? It wouldn't help the country. It wouldn't help any individual involved. But with all respect, I don't think a president has a right to sacrifice himself for an individual. And it would, of course, be personally unjust.
well, maybe.
Well, it's inhuman, Mr. President, and because days past, it's no damn well that you couldn't have known about it. That if one considers all the things you had to go through, you couldn't be a police judge, too. You're running the government. You're doing all the negotiating. You're carrying a bigger load than any president has.
Over the next 2 weeks, Nixon comes to the realization he'll have to force out his two closest aides, Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman and Domestic Policy Advisor John Ehrlichman.
I want to stress that in accepting these resignations, I mean to leave no implication, whatever, of personal wrongdoing on their part. And I leave no implication tonight of implication on the part of others who have been charged in this matter.
Later that evening, the president reaches out to friends and aides for support, including his chief of staff, who had just resigned.
Hope I didn't let you down.
No, sir. You got your points over, and now you got it set right and move on. You're right where you ought to be.
Well, it's a tough thing, Bob, for you, for John, the rest, but goddammit, I'm never going to discuss this son of a bitching Watergate thing again. Never, 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 never. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. You've done it now, and you've laid out your position. You've laid out you've taken your steps. You've put the
interesting thing, you know, we haven't heard the only cabinet officer that is called, and this is 50 minutes after the thing is over, is Capwinder, bless his soul. All the rest, you know, are waiting to see what the polls show. Goddamn strong cabinet, isn't it?
Oh, you better check and be sure, because they may, you know, we've had a...
No. They know who to call, you know. They know they can get through. But in any event, I just want you to know that Cap called, and he was all the way.
Good.
But let me say, you're a strong man, God damn it, and I love you. And I love John, all the rest, and by God, keep the faith. You're going to win this son of a bitch.
And joining us is Stanley Kutler, author of Abuse of Power, who fought so long for the release of these Nixon tapes. We just heard what seemed to be a kind of uncharacteristic Nixon moment when he's telling Haldeman, I love you.
Yes, I think it is uncharacteristic. It was quite a surprise to me to hear it, but it's a sad, poignant moment because now Nixon is alone. He's losing Haldeman, his most loyal lieutenant. It's his last line of defense. The wagons are circling, and he knows it.
He's talking about the loyalty there of Haldeman and Ehrlichman and Caspar Weinberger, but he's also saying that the rest of the cabinet is waiting for the polls to come and suggesting he's worried about them abandoning ship.
Yes, he's worried about them, but he's also trying to keep Haldeman and Ehrlichman close to his vest, too, at this time, because he doesn't want them to stray too far from the fold, to be loyal to the end. I mean, he's still hoping to keep Dean on board until the last moment.
Dean is the White House counsel.
Right.
In the other conversation we heard with Henry Kissinger, Nixon is threatening his resignation. This is about a year and a half before he resigns. What's he doing there?
Well, he does this periodically. On the one hand, it's a kind of Uriah Heep pose, feeling sorry for himself. But it also is a realization on his part. This becomes clearer the next month that if anybody finds out what he knows and what he did, that indeed he is in serious trouble.
In that conversation with Kissinger, one of the things Nixon does when he's threatening his resignation is suggest that, Spiro Agnew would have to take over, and Kissinger is obviously disdainful of that.
He's aghast at the idea because Spiro Agnew was Richard Nixon's life insurance policy in all this. As long as he's around, you're not going to impeach Nixon.
And he used that with his staff again and again.
Oh, yeah, he brought it up periodically, at least until October before Agnew resigned.
We're going to continue our conversation with Stanley Kutler. The Senate Watergate hearings begin, and a special prosecutor is named to investigate the growing scandal when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by OnStar.
We never thought we'd use OnStar for snakes.
I just hate snakes.
Yeah, traveling through Arizona, we blew a front tire, shot off the road, and I looked down at the ground. It is crawling with rattlesnakes.
It was unbelievable.
I pushed the OnStar button. Within seconds, the OnStar advisor pinpointed our location and sent a tow truck.
Called the paramedics.
Yeah, and kept talking because we
hate snakes.
Yeah.
The one-touch connection to people who can help.
OnStar.
Call 1-800-OnStar-7.
Discipline creates performance. As of the most recent calendar year end, the AIM Charter Fund has outperformed the S&P 500 for a 30-year period, something only a handful of mutual funds can claim. The idea is discipline. The purpose is performance. The name is AIM.
Thursday, they can't stop what they're doing. It can ruin their lives, but now there may be help. Help them face their fears.
Or they could get very intensive behavioral therapy, state-of-the-art medications.
And see what happens.
I feel much more confident. My self-esteem is up. I feel much better about myself.
On 2020 Downtown, Thursday.
I've had some past credit problems, and getting a car can be a real challenge. Dealers have told me no. But I got a yes from 1-800-GET-A-YES. 1-800-GET-A-YES is a service that has helped over 1 million people just like me find fast, affordable auto financing.
No one wanted to give me a car loan because of my past problems. I was about to give up when a friend told me about 1-800-GET-A-YES, and they said yes to me, fast.
Got your credit in a mess, the 1-800-GET-A-YES.
Rooms to Go has the lowest prices by the piece and by the room.
Check. The most up-to-date furniture fashion, the largest inventory in stock. Check, check.
Delivery in days.
Check. No fake sales, no phony discounts. Check. That's it.
Oh, you're forgetting something.
I am?
At Rooms to Go, you can buy now, put no money down, make no payments, pay no interest until July 2001.
That is over 16 months from now.
No interest, no accruals, no tricks.
Big check.
Which is why everyone should
check
Rooms to Go.
The committee will come to order.
Despite President Nixon's efforts to derail them, the Senate Watergate hearings convened, broadcast live on all the networks. At the end of the second day, Nixon talks with his new chief of staff, General Alexander Haig, about the hearings, the special prosecutor appointed to investigate Watergate, Archibald Cox, and whether it's time for another televised address on Watergate.
My God, they better know the stakes are national security and not a lot of horse. That's right. Pick and shovel political dirt, which that's what it is. Really all they have. That's right. And then we want them to know it, and they're going to take a lot of responsibility in their hands in taking this on. Exactly right. They're going to indict some people. You know that. Oh, yes. That's right. For that time, Stu Richardson will have his prosecutor and all that horse. I see you got a humdinger. What'd you get? A fellow named Cox that used to be a Solicitor General for Kennedy. But he's very well respected. Yes, conscientious. I don't think he's too bad. Did he take him? Well, they haven't endorsed him yet, but he's out, and it'll be hard for them not to. Oh, Christ! If he asks Cox to do this, they can't turn Cox down. Believe me. No, I don't see how they can. And Cox is not a mean man. He's a partisan, but not that mean. That's right. That's the way the description I got. He's not a zealot. Believe me, if he get Cox, that'd be great. Fine.
But it wouldn't take long for Nixon to turn on the special prosecutor. Just 3 weeks later, he phones his counsel, Fred Buzhardt, and urges him to play a tough game with Cox.
I want you to say, quite candidly, I said, Mr. Cox, all over town, it's been written and said that you're out to get the president. Now, if that is the case, we want you to know we're ready for the fight. I think you should say that to him. Quite clear. I'll put it in just those terms. Yeah, you're out to get the president. He says that several columns have written this and so forth, that you and your staff are out to get the president. He says your record and so forth, we can't believe that, but we want you to know that if some of the junior members of your staff say that they have been saying that, put it on them, have been saying this, that if that's it, we're ready for the fight.
By May 22nd, the White House issues an 8-page statement flat out denying the president himself had any prior knowledge of Watergate. But it does concede a wide-ranging White House cover-up not involving the president. Back again with historian Stanley Kutler. Stanley, that flip-flop on Archibald Cox is really striking. At first, he's a conscientious, he's a respected, not a mean man. 3 weeks later, the president is sending an emissary to send Cox what kind of a message?
Well, almost an ultimatum. But he remembers by then that Cox, after all, taught at Harvard. Cox had served in the Kennedy administration. And about a month after the appointment, he's referring to him as a partisan viper.
What happened in those 3 weeks to cause that dramatic change?
Well, because Cox is launching a serious investigation. It heats up more after July when White House aide Alexander Butterfield reveals the existence of the White House taping system. At that point, Cox, had been reluctant to intervene directly against the president, but now he wants to subpoena the White House tapes.
And what is the message that Nixon is trying to send when he sends Buzhardt, who is the deputy White House counsel, to see Cox? What is that message?
Well, I think it's purely one of intimidation, to just stay away from this. And, I don't know whether he regarded Cox at this point as some sort of window dressing, but Archibald Cox certainly did not regard himself as such.
And we should remember at this point, these tapes are still secret.
yes.
And this is a very much of a hidden hand that
Yeah,
Nixon
well, it's
had.
a kind of subtext of this whole period, because Nixon and Haldeman at this very moment is reviewing some of the tapes. And Haldeman at this moment is telling him that the famous cancer on the presidency speech is not harmful to you. And but he and Nixon are in regular communication on this.
So all the while, they know it's being recorded, and nobody else does.
Yes, yes.
When we come back in a moment, pointers from a president under siege, defending Mr. Nixon on television.
Well, it rained.
A state of emergency has washed away roads leading.
For 3 straight days it rained.
A series of storms coming.
Then the levee broke.
4-foot wave washed through town, tore everything up.
A whole lot of people lost everything.
Everything they had.
Another problem was we had all this water.
But you couldn't drink a drop of it.
That's when the truck from Miller rolled up.
I see it and I'm thinking beer.
Beer?
Beer? But it was water.
They stopped bottling beer.
They stopped bottling beer and bottled water for us instead.
Miller, part of the Philip Morris family of companies, donated thousands of gallons of drinking water to disaster victims last year. For decades, Philip Morris has assisted communities in distress all around the world.
Actually, I could have used a beer right then. But that's another story.
Working to make a difference. The people of Philip Morris.
They did a bad, bad thing. They did a bad, bad thing. They did a bad, bad thing. They did a bad, bad thing.
Nice try. You've been out driving again.
The Lexus GS. Sinful.
That new boss is from another planet.
Totally spaced out at that meeting.
Hey, what's that on your desk?
ABCnews.com. Ready when you are.
Message of example from the Churches of Christ.
Want to know more about your health? Now News 2 brings you a valuable health resource that's just a mouse click away. Just log on to WKRN.com and click on DrCoop.com. Then let Dr. Coop help you find the latest information on health and medicine. Find ways to lose weight, stop smoking, and even refill your prescriptions online. And best of all, his advice is free. So come to the News 2 website and check out your family's health on WKRN.com. A service brought to you by DrCoop.com and News 2.
By June 1973, the president is confronting gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Senate Watergate hearings and a steady stream of damaging headlines. Among the few defenders willing to go to bat for Nixon is his former aide, Charles Colson, who's preparing to tape an interview with ABC's Howard K. Smith when Nixon calls him.
I just wondered how you were doing on your Smith thing. Well, I go over at 2 o'clock to tape it, and it'll be on this evening at 7:30 following the evening news. They're going to do a half-hour special. Good. I've gone over it with Howard, and he with Smith, and I think he's prepared. What kind of point you going to make? Well, principally that I think it's a great tragedy, disgrace, really, that we're trying the President of the United States and the press based on third-hand hearsay.
I couldn't sit by any longer idly watching while the President of the United States was being tried in the press on third, fourth-hand hearsay, on opinion, on the wildest kind of charges. I know that the President of the United States was not involved in the Watergate. I know that the President of the United States was not involved in the Watergate cover-up.
The president had coached Colson to give no quarter in the interview.
But you can use sort of a vernacular, you see, that they're trying to get the president. They are out to get the president. That's right. This is what this is, and he's totally innocent, and they know it. Right. They all know it, and they're out to get him. And also, you can point out what president in history would have taken two men that he knows are not guilty, like Haldeman and Ehrlichman, and, let him resign. In other words, that the president is doing everything that he can to cooperate with these people. If he asks you about presidential papers, fuzz that up, or we can't give on that, as you know.
Throughout these conversations, you hear Nixon exasperated that the press won't give him a break, and yet reporters seem willing to give the Kennedys a pass.
An indication of the double standard is that after all of the crap they did about wiretaps, we broke this sensational story showing the actual count. Bobby Kennedy was the greatest wiretapper, twice as much as Eisenhower and twice as much as Nixon.
Exactly right.
It wasn't even in the Times or Post. They didn't even print it. They're out to get us.
Oh, Jesus.
Back again with Stanley Kutler. Stanley, the president there is railing about the injustice of it all. Apparently the press is not buying the White House line that the Kennedys taped every bit as much as the Nixon White House did.
Well, that's familiar vintage Nixon to complain about his lot in life vis-a-vis the Kennedys. He does this any number of times, and with some justification, of course.
The other line that sort of jumps out there is when Nixon says, they're out to get us.
Yeah, well, that's that bunker mentality, us against them. That recurs throughout the tapes. He sees himself as, isolated. And, of course, as these months wear on, these last few months of the existence of the tapes, you see it more and more clearly. He is isolated.
One of those still going to bat for him at this point is Charles Colson. And we heard Colson and Nixon in that segment talk about how Colson was going to spin for the president on the Howard K. Smith show.
Well, the faithful, loyal Colson, who's still doing dirty things for the president, doing deeds and so forth. But he's not coming into the White House now. Colson has been identified with the White House burglars, most especially Howard Hunt.
He's persona non grata in the White House.
Well, he's
at least publicly.
Publicly, yes. He's not coming in there. But Nixon's on the phone with him a great deal. And in fact, even Haldeman complained about earlier times that he always found something sinister about conversations between Colson and Nixon.
Is Colson going out to the public because there's nobody left in the White House to defend Nixon at this point?
No, I think there are others, but this is what Colson does. And Nixon has him do it at this point.
One of the more interesting tapes that was released today is a conversation between Nixon and his old friend BeBe Rebozo, and Nixon gets some solace from a very unlikely source, as Rebozo describes to him a letter that he's received.
I had a funny thing today. My God, I got a letter from Leavenworth Prison from the former mayor of Jersey City, who got 15 years.
Oh boy.
Sympathizing with you.
I'll be darned.
And gave the media the very channel,
Yeah.
The guy. I just felt sorry for him. But
Well, I think of all of our good people that are being involved in a way that, they're all doing what they thought was right.
Sure.
It's just terrible.
That's right.
It's the media that's doing it.
Work out.
Well, I think it's picking up, though. What do you think?
Oh, no question.
When we come back, what could be the most infamous 18 and a half minutes of audio tape in American history?
Picture this, a life without worry, where problems are quickly solved. Picture a future that's financially secure for you and the ones you love. Picture Nationwide, with auto, home, and life insurance products to protect what you hold dear, and retirement planning to help you prepare for your future. If you can picture it, Nationwide can too. Nationwide, insurance, financial services on your side.
An equal housing opportunity insurer.
Not one of these single-ingredient pain relievers is FDA approved for migraine pain. Only Excedrin Migraine is. It has 2 proven pain relievers, plus an enhancing ingredient to make it work even better. Excedrin Migraine, the only approved formula.
Did you know it can actually cost you more to call your state capital than your nation's capital? But with Sprint Nickel Nights Anywhere, in-state and out-of-state calls are all the same nickel. You do the math. We'll do the geography. Switch to Sprint at 1-800-PIN-DROP.
20 years ago, these friends struggled to make it.
Mary, Rhoda.
Now they're back as suddenly single mothers.
I think they were always like this. I'm guessing yes.
And things haven't gotten any easier.
You smoke now?
Only when I drink.
Much better.
Did you pierce your tongue?
It's a clip-on.
Mary Tyler Moore, Valerie Harper, together again in an ABC original.
You have to start taking me seriously.
Mary and Rhoda, Monday, 8/7 Central on ABC.
Value is important to us as a family. And when we find it, we expect quality, right? So who says that quality dental care can't be affordable dental care?
At the Castle, get braces for nothing down and $98 a month. Crowns as low as $398, dentures as low as $265.
The Castle is making it easier for me to provide for my kids. And I like that.
Call the Castle today. 1-800-TO-SMILE. Quality dental care. Affordable for everyone.
Boy meets girl. It happens every day on the singles line.
It's not always easy to know when there's a mutual attraction. I like the singles line because it's easy to show interest, or not, without hurting anyone's feelings.
I like learning about a person before talking to them, and it didn't cost me a penny to try it.
Discover a new way to meet the nicest people in Nashville. The Nashville Singles Line, 399-1919.
Apart from the identity of Deep Throat, Woodward and Bernstein's source of many of their stories in the Washington Post, the most enduring mystery of the Watergate saga is an 18.5-minute gap on a conversation between President Nixon and his Chief of Staff, H.R. Haldeman, just 3 days after the Watergate break-in. All you hear on the tape is hiss, hum, buzzes, and clicks. The revelation that the White House deliberately erased a tape shook the nation. Nearly 30 years later, it's still unclear who was responsible for what experts determined to be at least 5 separate manual erasures. Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Woods, gave a demonstration ridiculed at the time of how she might have erased the tape while taking a phone call. But audio specialists said that would have been impossible. And we're back now with historian Stanley Kutler. Stanley, you've researched from a number of sources, including Haldeman's own diary, what might have been on that 18.5-minute gap.
Well, he reports this is the first meeting in the White House after Nixon has returned from Florida after the Watergate break-in, and we can be certain that they're not talking about future orange juice prices. Haldeman reports to him on meetings that he has had with Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean, talking about what the White House response shall be. And particularly he emphasizes in the diary there that they talked about trying to contain the FBI investigation and to mount a counterattack of their own and to use one of his favorite verbs to PR the whole thing.
Now that the National Archives has released all these hundreds of hours of tapes, which you fought for so many years to release, what do you think the real significance of them now is that the public, for the first time, has been able to hear them and listen to them?
Well, I think this is material for future historians to work with. They will use this as a complement to the documentary record, which is very, very rich. It is not a source to be relied upon by itself because it's incomplete. Conversations are incomplete. But we have to remember the importance of the tape for all time, the tapes, namely that without them, there would have been no resignation. That's their importance.
There's a certain irony here that the same tapes that destroyed Nixon also destroyed the ability of future historians to record things at the White House.
Well, I'm confident that historians could still piece together a story, as they always have, with or without tapes. The interesting question is whether taping is still being done in the White House. And
Good question.
I wouldn't make book on it.
Stanley, thank you very much. A National Archives internal memo suggests there may be a new effort to determine what's on the 18.5-minute gap, given the technology available today. And that's our report for tonight. I'm Chris Bury in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Nightline is always on with abcnews.com. Part of the Go Network. You can order a transcript or video cassette of this or any other Nightline broadcast by dialing 1-800-CALL-ABC.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Tomorrow, tracing your every move.
violating your rights and empowering criminals. The dark side of the internet. Watch ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.